Okay. All right. Grab your, you got this sheet that one that has the pointers and tips for the competency. You should have that. I also gave you guys the 9-hole peg test, the percentiles. You got male and female, front and back. You should have that. And you printed your rubric, so you're good there. Make sure, I don't know how much time you guys have had to practice, just make sure you get in here for lab to practice for the competency next week. Grab your rubrics. We're going to go over that first. And we're going to go, basically, since we missed yesterday, I tried to condense everything I wanted to say on here so you could have it also on your tips and pointers sheet. So we'll start here at the, on your rubrics, make sure you bring them with you for competencies. If you want to make notes, maybe make them on a separate piece of paper right now. But try to bring your rubrics with your name and date on it for competencies when you come next week, okay? Okay, on section 1 of the rubric, it talks about the overview of the test setup and overview of instructions to give the patient. And you're scored. Just make sure your written part should reflect the fact that these are standardized tests, okay? That's what we're looking for. This way. You can come in. So what you write, again, should be standardized, okay? Come on in. We just got started, basically.
Okay. Is this one too?
Yeah, we're going to go over a few things. Do you guys have your rubrics printed?
No.
Okay. I'm going to do another group after this group, so I'll go over it again with you guys. I'm going to get this group done, though, okay?
Okay.
So if you want
it's not
to
going
eat,
to take the whole time?
no, it's not going to take
Okay.
that long. So if you want to eat, whatever you want to do, but then after I'm done with these guys, I'll come talk to you, but I do need you to have your rubrics printed.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, guys.
It's okay. Okay, so your description should reflect the fact that these are standardized tests. If you want to see the whole manual, the manuals are in the folders with the actual assessments on the card, okay? So if you need to look at them, you can look at those, okay? Section 2 is the SOAP note. And I know just from grading your practice SOAP notes, it gave me an idea of kind of the way you guys were thinking, and I just want to try to help you understand what we need, okay? I was telling Ellen, you don't have to put a bunch of filler stuff in. And Leslie, I don't think you did. I think you were just, this is what it was, blah, 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 blah. And, you put what you need. Ellen was worried about not having enough, and she put a whole bunch of stuff in.
Which
but
one
really,
was this one?
huh?
Which one?
The SOAP note from the competencies. I don't know if you did 9-hole or what it was,
Oh.
but yeah. So,
I did something right.
part of the testing is to be brief and concise, okay? You just need the information what's pertinent, okay? So looking at the rubric, the S portion. Does anybody not understand what the S portion is? This is subjective. What are some things that you can ask your patient right from the start that would give you some information from that?
How was your day? Anything that possibly you could get out of what he was there for? How
Okay.
he feels about it?
How are you feeling today? Any pain maybe? Which is your dominant hand, right or left hand? Just anything that you can, like you said, that you can get out of them. It has to be what the patient says. That can be put on there. Okay? The O portion. Okay? Look at the printers, the tips and printers that I typed up for you. Make sure you look at the rubric for the requirements and make sure you document the results. That means in the O portion, you're going to need how many seconds it took them to complete it, or in the case of the Purdue, how many pieces it took, okay? That needs to be in there. You need to document that. Make sure you document for all areas of the testing. I had some people on the practice, like on the Minnesota, they put the score down for the placing, but not the turning. Each test is going to have 2, right? The 9-hole peg test has the right and left. The Minnesota has the placing and the turning, and the Purdue has the dominant hand test and also the assembly. Okay, so make sure you're documenting both. Also in the O, you may also document the percentile results in the O section if you choose. If you look at the rubric, It actually has it in the A section, but my preference is, and I talked to Tracy about this, that it's still the results, okay? So you can also put it in the O section, which is where I would prefer to see it done, documented, okay? But if you don't put it in the O, then it has to be in the A, okay? So make sure you have that information down as well. On the O section, if you look at the rubric, it tells you right there what we're looking for. Client seen for blank minutes in the OT layout, the clinic, for what? Okay? Really, that's how you should be starting it off, right? So we know. I'm going to do an example at the end on kind of a whole soap note, but so make sure you have that in there also. Now, in the A section, if you didn't document the percentile in the O, it has to be in the A. But also, if we need in the A section your what? Your professional opinion on how the assessment went, okay? We need to have that in there, okay? Because some of you were very confused on maybe what needed to be in the A section. If you look at your sheet that I typed up, to help, utilize this thought for your documentation, okay? To be considered for employment, the client would have to place above or equal to the 75th percentile in the testing areas. Does that give you an idea? If you have a client, and in the O section, you documented, say they were 80th percentile. You come down here to the assessment part, your professional opinion. What would be your professional opinion? If in the O you just said they were the 80th percentile.
If they score high enough to be considered a potential employee.
Exactly. What about if they scored 60% in the 60th percentile?
But they weren't. Didn't score high enough to meet the requirements of whatever company they were trying for.
And what else?
So would you recommend therapy, or?
You could say occupational therapy recommended for if they're for the assembly job, maybe it was a fine motor they lacked in. You know, you can recommend that they need some therapy for it, okay?
Just say recommended for therapy, or do we need to say like 2 weeks?
Well, that's your plan, okay?
Okay.
So in your A section, we've talked about if they fell below that 75th percentile, we're going to probably recommend some therapy to get them up, you know, to at least pass that, so they would be a possible employee for the employment. But then for your P, your plan could be then what?
Recommended therapy for 2 times a week for 3 weeks or whatever.
To
Increase by better
To
skills.
increase. Okay.
exactly, because you want to know what for, okay?
So you put that in the
You
P
could
then.
put OT, occupational therapy recommended, like you said, 2 times a week for 3 weeks to increase fine motor coordination,
Okay.
okay? Do you understand does that help you with the documentation if I put that in there to kind of gauge that on? Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. And we'll go over the soap note in just a second too, okay? Okay, we talked about the P part then on the test. There shouldn't be any new information in the A or the P, okay? Make sure when you look, when you make a plan, you're relating the information to what was in the O and the A section, okay? Just like what you said. We knew the scores, you gave your professional opinion, and now we're going to have a plan. It all goes together. It all ties together, okay? Does that make sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then, if you look at your rubrics, basically the rest of the sections are talking about the completion, like I have the Minnesota pulled out, talks about the Minnesota placing and the Minnesota turning, okay? Talks about therapeutic use of self, the standardized format and setup, timely presentation. Do you remember I said make sure you practice because you're going to be graded. If you're got your nose in your paper because you're not really sure what to say, it's going to show me that you really didn't practice it that much, okay? So you want it to flow. Also able to correctly demonstrate to the patient and correct mistakes through the testing. And the results. I'll also be timing you. Our results need to match, okay? If it's seconds, we need to be pretty close to right on. We should be right on. Okay? If it's the Purdue and we're counting pieces, we need to be exact. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on that so far? We all good? We'll go. I'm going to have another group and we'll go back through so you won't miss anything, okay? You'll just hear it twice, so that'll be good, right? Okay. Some additional information I put in, some is review, some of it is what we talked about last week. You have the percentile sheet for the 9-hole peg test. And if you look at that sheet, you're going to see there is quite a big span. It goes from the 10th percentile to the 25th to the 50th. So if you have to use a range, and my example in the sheet was right here. Look at your percentile sheet. If you have 20 to 24-year-old female with 13 recorded seconds with the right hand, where would she fall on the percentile scale? Anybody?
Well, as Tracy said yesterday, you should put it between the 75th and the 90th. Don't
Right.
estimate.
Right. We want it between because there is such a span, okay? You could go ahead and do that, okay? But you're going to have the seconds recorded. That's going to be in your SOAP note, and then you're going to say it's between 75th and 90th percentile. Okay, make sense? Okay. The competency forms, I kind of revised them a little bit. I didn't really change them. I just spread it out and put the SOAP note on the back. That way you have more room. It's not so close. You'll have more room to write. So they'll be basically the same. Just on the back side will be the SOAP note. I already have them copied. I will have a stack here for you to do your SOAP note. Okay? So we're good with that. Make sure, what kind of color of ink are you supposed to write your SOAP note in?
Black.
Okay. Make sure you have a black pen available. And you know, in that tub right there, if you don't have a pen, there's like a bunch of them in there. Okay? So if you wouldn't have it, you can always get one out of there. How are you supposed to sign your note? A lot of you, when you did the practice SOAP note, didn't sign it. Make sure you sign it, and then what are you supposed to put after it?
Student.
Make sure you have it, okay? And I talked to Tracy, and I know she's also told you to do something else. You need, on your SOAP note, somewhere at the bottom, written in collaboration with the OTR. Correct? Okay. You need to make sure you have that in there also. In your SOAP note, instead of saying 50%, now this is in your SOAP note. I know in the score sheet we talked about just putting it in there, but when you actually write your SOAP note, instead of saying 50%, you're going to write it as the 50th percentile. Okay? Make sense? Okay. And also on the Minnesota, do you remember what I asked? I asked for the percentile and the verbal score, okay? So at least on the Minnesota, that's the only one I asked for. When you document, I should have the percentile and the verbal score. And you'll also have that on your score sheet. You guys remember that? Okay. Okay. We talked about making sure that both areas of each test is documented. So with the Minnesota and the Purdue, you're going to have 3 parts to turn in. You're going to have the rubric, which you're going to bring, the competency sheet, and the score sheet. For the 9-hole, you're going to have the rubric and the competency sheet. Okay? Last week, I said make sure you take notes on the score sheet on how to fill it out. Hopefully you guys all did that, and you can go back and review that. Make sure you practice. Any other questions? Does it kind of help going through the SOAP note? That's what we're looking for. A little bit more. Okay. The 9-hole peg test. What is it testing?
Fine motor. Isn't it fine motor?
Fine motor coordination and the finger dexterity. How about the Minnesota? The Minnesota was the eye-hand finger coordination and the gross motor skills, and the Purdue was the gross movements of the fingers, hands, and arms, and also with the assembly part, the fine fingertip dexterity. You guys remember that? Because let's do a practice soap note real quick, okay? Anybody have any questions on the S though? We're all okay with that? Okay. So tell me an O portion. Patient was seen for how many minutes? In
10 minutes in the classroom setting.
for this is where you guys get confused. You could say for pre-employment screening, utilizing, we're going to use the Minnesota as example, utilizing the Minnesota manual dexterity test to assess, what did we just say the Minnesota assessed?
Gross motor skills.
Okay, the eye-hand coordination and the arm-hand dexterity. Okay, so we told what test we're doing and for what reason. Okay, then you're going to say something like, on the placing test, this client scored whatever the score was. Okay, and second, which is the whatever percentile, and also a verbal score of whatever. Okay, make sense of how we kind of want it written out? Okay, you're also going to do then the turning test the same way. And you're going to go down to your professional opinion. You're going to be able to see, did that person fall at least 75% or above? And you're going to use that information to write your professional opinion in the soap note. Make sense? Okay. And then from that, you're going to have a plan. Does it all make sense to you? Does it help to know what we're looking for? Does it help to have the rubric? Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?